Good afternoon and welcome to our fourth and final webinar of the week. We do have a full program for you next week, kicking off on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. But thank you for coming along. If you joined us in one of our earlier events this week, it's good to have you back. My name is still Andy Bridge, and last time I checked, I still work for a business called Appits Limited, A Place in the Sun. And we publish A Place in the Sun magazine. We run the portal website aplaceinthesun.com. We have a currency business called A Place in the Sun Currency, and we also organize exhibitions called A Place in the Sun Live. Now, ordinarily, we would be in the latter stages of preparing for our large-scale event at London Olympia next weekend, but sadly, that's not going ahead. So what we decided to do was to take the content from that exhibition and present it via this webinar format. They've gone well this week, I think. People seem to have enjoyed them. And as I said, thank you for tuning back in or joining us for the first time. Today's session is all about buying in Portugal, how to buy and where to buy. Presumably if you're here, you agree with me. Portugal, absolutely wonderful country, wonderful people, culture, food, a lot going for it in terms of a property destination. These webinars we found work best with interaction from the audience. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. We will be asking polls during the event. There are 3 different polls, so you just click your preference when we ask you that. And at any point you can click the icon on the screen, the question mark, and ask a question. We've already got some questions coming in, so that is good. Feel free to throw those at our panel of experts. We've actually had our first question of the day, and it's from somebody I happen to know rather well. It's from my friend and colleague Liz Rowlinson, who's the editor of A Place in the Sun magazine. She's feeling rather pleased with herself. She's just down the road in the posher part of southeast London. She's just finished the summer issue of A Place in the Sun magazine, and that will be launched next week. She asked the question, is it okay to tune into this webinar with a glass of Vinho Verde? So, well, Liz, I'm not going to comment on your drinking. If you have to listen to me, you'll know from experience it's often better done through the filter of alcohol. So please, yeah, feet up and enjoy yourself. We are fortunate this afternoon to be joined by 3 experts. They all work in the field of facilitating a property purchase in Portugal, primarily for British buyers. They're all based in Portugal. We have 1 Portuguese participant, and we have 2 expat people from the United Kingdom, and it's good to have them all along. So they're certainly big enough and old enough to introduce themselves. So let me pass over and ask them to do that. Paula, how are you today?
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm okay. Thank you for asking, Andy. I'm Paula Meireles, a lawyer from Lisbon, based in the Algarve for almost 20 years now. Dedicated myself to conveyancing and representing foreign clients on their interest in Portugal, buying and selling properties, forming companies. That's what we mainly do in our offices.
Thank you, Paula. And now over to Gavin, who I was very careful. I said expat people from the UK. Gavin's a proud Scot, a Partick Thistle fan, so likes to put himself through plenty of pain. What do you do for a living, please, Gavin?
I'm the senior partner for Blevins Franks in Portugal here. I've been in the Algarve for the last 20 years, and I lead the offices here in Algarve and in Cascais. At Blevins Franks, what we look to do is to guide you through and give you a roadmap to ensure that if you are moving to Portugal, you do that as tax efficiently as possible. It's important to get the order of events right. So we'll show our clients and hopefully your viewers and listeners today how to deal with their income, pensions and investments, and ensure that they understand how they'll be treated for tax purposes if they're moving to Portugal, or how they might structure a buy-to-rent property and so on, and what that means in terms of their income here in Portugal and how that would be reported back in the UK. All of our advisors are British. So yes, a few Scots, but we allow Englishmen in there as well, and English ladies. They've all made the move already, so we quite often find ourselves giving practical advice to people either moving out or looking to spend time here, about the area, about the schools, so we get involved in that. And it's a bit like having a trusted UK independent financial advisor, but one that understands the Portuguese system as well and is able to guide you through and explain how those systems link together, because they are quite different. And that's what I've been doing here for the last 20 years.
Lovely. Thank you, Gavin. These services all revolve around owning a property. So Angela's probably going to pitch that her role is the most important because she facilitates finding and selling people property. Angela, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good. Yes, I'm Angela. I'm the director to Ideal Homes International. We're an estate agent here based in the Algarve, mainly deal with overseas clients. And I've been here 14 years and worked for the company around 5.5 years.
Thank you. So we're going to kick off with a poll just to get some interaction from our audience. We have, wow, over 250 people with us already, so that's good. Thank you for joining and welcome. The poll we're going to ask is, hopefully one we'll get a positive response on. Are you seriously considering buying an overseas property purchase? So we're just trying to get a sense of how motivated people are at the moment, and whether it's kind of casual browsing or we have an audience of people who are particularly committed to buying that property. So if you can just choose one of those options, it's a simple yes, no. Are you seriously considering an overseas property purchase? I guess for most people that's going to be in Portugal, the reason for you being on this session. So we can finish that one off now, and we have a result. Wow, 92% of people are seriously considering an overseas property purchase. Well, you're in the right place. Thank you for Katrina in the background managing that poll. That's a healthy level of interest from our audience. So going back to our panelists, we just want to introduce the main protagonists in the idea of buying an overseas property. So this might sound quite basic to some people, but Angela, people make an inquiry perhaps on a placeinthesun.com. They get put in touch via inquiring on a property with somebody like yourselves. What is it that you do for them, and what's the role that you fulfill, and is it different to the way a UK agent might operate? Do you do extra stuff? How do you fill your day looking after potential buyers?
Okay, so well, we do, like I say, deal with mainly overseas clients. So we obviously have to work a little differently to whether if we was there where the people are actually living. So we do a lot of things. We like to be able to do everything for someone that comes along. So it starts off where we've got a team of people that are there ready at the phone for you all the time, just wanting to talk to you and answer your questions. So it's about just answering those doubts and finding out a little bit more at the early stages. Then what we can do is we can get you a subsidised trip once the flights are going. But at the moment we also can do you a virtual tour, which is very, very similar, but you're sat at home looking around a property with one of our consultants. And we can also get you in touch with a mortgage consultant. So she will be able to do all the liaising with the banks for you, do all the paperwork, make sure you get everything in English, and sort out that. We also have someone who can change your money, so they can do the currency exchange for you. Once you've bought your property, we can get you in touch with the rentals people. We also rent the property out for you. We've got a full rental service. We can introduce you to lawyers, architects. So what we like to think is that once you contact us, you don't need anybody else to have to go to on your own independently. You'll be given all the knowledge and the help to do it from home or from coming over here, but either way you'll be able to find the right property. And it's just about a lot of time it's about the answering those questions and making sure this is right for you before you make that step.
Okay, thanks. And I appreciate you do other services, but would it be fair to say that your primary function is you're helping people find the right property within the budget, touring them around the destinations, getting them used to the locations, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's like they always say, location, location. So it's not only about the property, it's about where they're buying it as well. So we do like to, the viewing trips that we do unsubsidised. We like to do for 3 or 4 days, which means that when you go to see a property, you don't only see the property, but you'll see the local cafe, the beach that's nearest, and you get a feel for what's around it as well as the actual property. And within that, you meet the people that you're going to be working with going along to be able to answer the questions that you need. So it's a big whole round service from start to finish.
Okay, thank you. And Paola, the agent, obviously is involved in a lot of that, but we advise, and I'm sure you would agree, that any buyer looks to get some independent legal advice, and presumably that's the sort of thing that you do for buyers, is it?
Yes, that's what we do exactly. It's giving independent advice. And what we do for the clients is, first of all, on our first meeting, we explain the process. We ask them if they have any particular queries. If they don't, we run through the process, and then we start, if the client engages our services, we start our legal searches. So I would say that the most difficult part of the process is actually to find the property. Once you have found the property, after that, then leave it to us, because we will contact the real estate agents. They will give us the contact details of the lawyer representing the vendor, and we will request from them all the documentation of the property. There are 3 main documents that we really need to look seriously into for our legal searches. Habitation license, which is the document that grants me the certainty that all the property was built according to the regulations in place. We run through the whole project. Of course, I just look into architecture plans and legalities. We bring with us the design of the property, the drawings made by the architects, because we later will send them to the buyers to make sure that the property corresponds exactly to what they have seen. We go through land registry certificates and fiscal booklets. With the fiscal booklet, we will find out if this property has any kinds of debts, this owner has any kind of debts to the Portuguese authorities that could be claimed against the property. And with the land registry certificates, we go through the life record of the property, seeing everything regarding the story, the full story of the property, since it was a single plot of land, got permission to be plotted, reported, built up to the final product of the client. And in the other hand, also everyone that had dealt with the property that has or had a particular interest will be there inscribed. Once we have checked these 3 main documents, we will be in position to come back to the interested purchaser. And up to this stage, Andy, we only have a gentleman's agreement. From now on is the moment when people will commit. We come back, we inform about the result of our legal searches, and people from here on is when they really will commit, because if they decide to move forward, we will prepare the contracts. A promissory contract of purchase and sale, which is equivalent to exchange in the UK, but differently than in the UK. In Portugal, you have to pay a deposit when you sign this contract. And from here on is when the deal will become binding. Up to this moment, as I said, it's a gentleman's agreement. You could pull out with no consequences, as the vendor could sell to anybody else without any consequences. Once you sign the promissory contract, if you pull out, you lose your deposit. And the vendor, if they pull out or if they would try to gazump, they will have to refund you in double the amount that they have received as deposit. So this makes Portugal very safe in terms of purchase and sale property business. Do not.
And can I just jump in there and ask a question? So at that point where you're signing the initial contract and you refer to a deposit, typically what percentage would you be paying at that point?
Normally, Andy, this has a variation in between 10 and 30% of the purchase price. Who will decide that? Is the vendor when he puts the property on the market. We lawyers, we will see if there is no mortgage that would be bigger than the 30% that they are asking. So we analyze that point in order to make the payment of the deposit safe.
Okay, thank you. And just run us through the just briefly up to completion.
From that moment on, no news is good news. When you sign the contract, we sign on your behalf. You don't need to be present. The clients don't need to be present. We can sign through power of attorney or as the business manager. And from the moment you sign the promissory contract up to completion, no news is good news. Meant that nothing bigger had came that obliged me to come back to the client. When will we contact the client? 2 weeks before completion, because that's the right timing to ask the clients to send over the remaining balance of the purchase price. Normally, we advise clients to use a currency broker, and because this will save them lots of money, much more money than using just the ordinary bank transfer. Most of our clients, they can save up to enough money to furnish their properties. So we are speaking about thousands of euros. These companies are very safe. They will transfer the money into our account in between 1 or 2 days, quicker than banks, because normally banks take 3 working days to reach the money to hit our client's account. And completion day is scheduled. Normally the client is present unless they request us to represent them by power of attorney. If they are present, we are next to them, making sure that deeds which is made in front of a notary is signed successfully and everything was fulfilled according to the rules and regulations. The client pays themselves with a banker's draft the balance of the remaining balance of the purchase price. In that same day, we receive the keys, and for the client, the process ends there.
Okay, so Gavin, I've found a property through Angela. I've used Paula's services for the conveyancing and the completion of my purchase. I'm thinking I might move out permanently to Portugal. What sort of considerations would you be putting in my mind, the sort of questions that you'd be asking me about what I need to think about for my personal wealth management?
Yeah, that's a good question, Andy. So the starting point really is to decide whether this person really wants to spend all of the time in this property, or they're going to spend some of the time. And we know with property, these are the big decisions of our life, they're the big ticket items. And so what we want to understand first is the lifestyle of the individual and how they're going to use that property. So we'll quite typically get people say to us, well, we think now that we may be coming closer to retirement, for example, that we'd like to spend half of our time in Portugal and half of our time back in the UK because we've got grandchildren coming along. And you say, well, is that 6 months and 6 months? Or is it 5 months and 7 months? Do you go anywhere else in the world? So we need to start to work out how much time people are going to spend in each location, because they could find themselves inadvertently tripping a tax liability if they're spending more than 6 months in Portugal, for example, more than 183 days, or if suddenly the Portugal becomes clearer that Portugal is their home. So either having it as our home or spending more than 6 months there, the Portuguese tax authority could deem you to be tax resident. So then some people say, well, that might be quite beneficial, Gavin, some of the tax rates. And we might like to do that. We might like to spend more time in Portugal and become tax resident there. Then we've got to look back the way and say, that's great, but has the UK tax man, has he let you go? So we'll look at the statutory residence test in the UK to determine whether they've truly left the UK and established themselves in Portugal. So when we're making these purchases, we've got to work out how we're going to use them and the most tax efficient way of making that move. And I like Paula's reference to currency. Currency is one of the most important things to consider in this move. If you think over the time I've been here in Portugal, we've seen our pound buying €1.50 when I first arrived, and I've seen it coming close to parity and only buying €1. So if all of your expenditure is in euro in Portugal when you bought your property, do you want to match up some income that matches that currency? Because if you think about it, if from 150 to a pound, you could finish up 1/3 poorer living in Portugal than you'd intended if you hadn't planned it correctly. So just making sure that you match up your assets to your liabilities is really important. And that's the kind of conversation that we would have once they'd met Angie, found the property, dealt with all the paperwork with Paola, and then they'll come to us finally. They should have come to us at the beginning to talk all those things through. But we only, generally, we meet them at the end when it's all done, and we say, okay, what's the consequence for you now? And let's see how we can plan it through. So we would like to meet you earlier.
We do have some far more specific questions that individuals are asking, so we'll come on to those later. But I just want to get a sense of where in Portugal people might be considering buying. So we're about to launch a poll. Clearly the most popular area is the Algarve, but an area I very much like, Lisbon and the Silver Coast, lovely part of the world, well, as is all of Portugal, and the north of Portugal. So I know there are other areas, there's inland areas as well, the Alentejo as well, but let's just get a view and see how many people are considering the Algarve, Lisbon, and indeed the Silver Coast, and then further north up towards Porto, and take a poll on that. If you can just tick one of those boxes, and then we'll take a look at the response to that. Okay, so there's quite a bit of interest in the Silver Coast. It's not normally seen as popular, but yeah, over half people are looking in the Algarve, which is certainly what you'd expect, and some interest in the north of Portugal, albeit smaller. So all three locations obviously well connected by budget airline carriers, and that's just useful to see. So thinking about the types of property, Angela, and you being based in the Algarve, let's try and get a sense. We're getting a bunch of questions through. What can I get for 80,000? What can I get for 100,000? Let's just take a two-bedroom apartment there in the Algarve. Again, I know it varies. You've got from Sagres all the way along to Tavira, and there's different prices and more popular locations. Can you just give us a sense of what you'd end up paying for a two-bedroom apartment in one of the more popular locations and then one of the less popular locations?
Okay, so if you go to Lagos, Lagos is west of the Algarve, a really nice place. It's got marina, beach, very good for rentals. We get a lot of rental people going there. And you're talking about, for an off-plan property right now, for a two-bedroomed apartment, really good standard, really good size, a lot of outdoor space, you're talking about 280 to 300,000. But then you also can look at something like, we've got renovations going there now, where a developer's bought an old building that was built about 30 years ago, and he's going to make it a modern building. So then you can look at like spending something like 210,000 on a two-bedroom apartment. So it does vary, and I mean you can go as high as you like. But it is a very popular place. That's where all the people that want to buy an investment tend to go to, because that's where the holidaymakers go right now. When you come more central, the central Algarve is uplifted a little bit because we've got the Golden Triangle in there, and what that is the upmarket. So you've got your Quinta do Lago, Villamoras, places like that, where you get your footballers and your people that are going to spend a lot of money. So it inflates it there. But if you come out of that and you go around, say, the Corvero, around those areas, you're looking at about 220,000 for a two-bedroom apartment. But then if we go east is getting more popular, but it's never been as popular as the rest of the Algarve. So the prices are a little lower. And you can get a two-bedroom apartment there for about 170, and it's like walk to the beach. So you're getting more for your money at the moment there. The prices are rising, increase more than the rest of the Algarve, but they are still low. So that is quite a good place to look at. The east is it's more traditional. It's more like the fishing villages are still more fishing villages rather than turned into little towns now. So it depends on what you want. If you go inland.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that we've had a few questions from people saying, is it realistic to go there with £80,000? I saw a question there earlier from somebody. I can't quite now see who that was, but thank you for the question. Yeah, is that realistic?
80,000, you would struggle, yes. If you've got 80,000, though, a good thing to do is look at a mortgage. The mortgage rates are really low at the moment. You're talking around 1%, 1.2%. You can get them up to 40 years. You can get them on fixed interest rates. So it is a good option. So if you're wanting, you haven't got quite enough to buy the property outright, but you've got a really good deposit, get the mortgage. If you're going to rent it out, the people that rent it out are going to be the ones that's paying your mortgage. And so you're making your money bigger. So that's what I would advise with someone with a budget of around about 80,000.
Okay, thank you. And Paula, some questions in on the legal side. Well, asking how much you charge for a start, but maybe not being as specific as that. But what would be useful is, say somebody has that £150,000 property in mind, or £200,000 property. What sort of percentage are you allocating for fees and taxes?
For taxes and lawyers' fees and everything inclusive, I would say maximum look up to 8%. Something in between 5 and 8% will cover everything, absolutely everything. And if we are speaking about the 80,000, we would be on the range of the 5%.
8%.
8 would be a top luxury property. That raises up to 8%.
Right. Okay. And we're getting a few questions in, Gavin, about the non-habitual resident scheme. I know there's quite a lot to it, and there's been quite significant change in it in recent months. Are you able to give us some sort of layman's summary?
Yeah, this has been a fantastic scheme for the Portuguese. They've encouraged, I think to date, in excess of 40,000 people have taken up the scheme. Portugal is one of those countries with an aging population. The younger kids are going overseas, and the Portuguese governments, consecutive governments of different colours, have been really keen to encourage people in. So British expatriates are made extremely welcome here, and they say, come in and bring your money with you and spend it while you're here. And they came up with the non-habitual residence scheme to say, it was originally designed for people who were employed, and it gave them benefits of a capped rate of 20% on income tax, and it was extended to retirees as well, to say, look, if you're coming here, we will encourage you by making this a low tax environment. And what they've done is they've said that things like overseas arising income, if it's dividend and income and things, it may be taxed at 0. If it's overseas pension income coming in, then it's taxed at a flat rate of 10%. So it's become a very, very attractive place for people to move to and come and live permanently. It makes their tax planning, their investment planning very tax efficient. Everybody says, well, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, as my granny said. And in this case, you've got to look at, well, what are the catches? The catches are that you've got to make sure that you plan it properly. You've got to make sure that you apply on time. Don't leave it too late. You've got until the 31st of March, the following tax year, to make sure you've got your application in. And it's not that everything is tax-free. It's tax exemption on income that may have been taxed, even if it hasn't been overseas. So my advice is, come to somebody like Blevins Franks, ask us the questions and say, this is my income, these are my assets, how would those be taxed, and how would I benefit from using the non-habitual residence regime in Portugal? It's a hugely effective scheme for giving people tax efficient income. And as an example, Andy, I might take you back to your question earlier when you said, when you come to us at the beginning, what are we talking about? And I said, look at the statutory residence test in the UK and where will you be resident? And in some cases, what it's done is it's helped my colleagues like Angela, where clients have come and said, well, we're thinking about buying an apartment for €80,000. And then I say, how much time are you going to spend? And they say, well, we're going to spend 6 months of the year there. And when you start to look at that practically, you say, well, actually, the apartment that you get isn't going to be adequate for the time that you're going to be spending there. But if we change your tax base from the UK to Portugal, you downsize in the UK, upsize and buy a nice villa with a pool in the Algarve, and suddenly you've got more income coming in, and you're able to enjoy a better lifestyle with the money that you've created by being more tax efficient with the assets that you have.
Okay, thank you. A caveat to a lot of the answers we're giving is depends whether you're living there full time or not. So we are just going to ask our third poll of the afternoon, which is how many of the people who are tuned in at the moment are 271 people. how many people are looking to buy a holiday home and how many people are looking to make a permanent move? I know some people who buy a holiday home might be doing so with the idea of retiring there later on, but as of now, would it be a holiday home or would it be a permanent move? If you can just indicate your status, and then we will close that poll. Shouldn't take too long. And okay, not much in it. So 44% holiday home and 56% a permanent move. So a lot of people, I can't imagine why, looking to get out of the United Kingdom and go and live in Portugal. Why would you? That really is quite interesting. We're going to jump into specific questions now, because we do have a lot of them coming through. And I have a question here from somebody. We only have the name of Stuart. Hello, Stuart. You've actually sent in, well, we've got 4 questions here. If you are an EU resident residing in Ireland, presumably Irish then, and moving to Portugal full time, are there grants available for property renovation or for starting a business employing Portuguese people? That might be quite a, do we know of anything about grants for starting businesses?
Not really.
No.
No.
Okay, let's ask another bit.
Very vaguely, the answer is yes. So there are areas of Portugal that the government would like to develop, and they've said yes, there are grants for certain areas. Traditionally, previously they were in the centres of Lisbon and Porto and places, but what's happened there is that gradually they've been so successful again at bringing people in and developing places like, I mean, Lisbon these days is absolutely thriving and bouncing. But what's happened is the government have come back and said, we're going to take those grants away from those areas and you will only get them in certain underdeveloped areas. So they do exist.
They do exist. Okay, and he also asks, can you legally reside in Portugal for up to 180 days? And what are the implications if you have retired? We've pretty much covered that, but if you just want to give a brief answer on that, Gavin.
Yeah, you can spend your holiday time here, and there are no Portuguese tax consequences of that, other than the purchase of the property and so on. So you would continue to be tax resident in the country that really was your home. Yeah.
Okay. A question here, maybe one for you, Paula, from Alan Harrison. Thank you, Alan. We plan to move to Portugal, become and be resident there, and also buy some apartments for holiday letting, which we would happily pay tax on. I'm not sure that it's optional anyway, but yeah, those taxes, if you're resident in Portugal, clearly those taxes are going to be chargeable in Portugal, aren't they, and payable in Portugal?
Yes, they are. The taxes over income over rentals is paid on the country where you receive the income, where the property is based. So yes, they are payable in Portugal, but they are not double taxed. Once they are taxed in Portugal, they will never be taxed in the UK.
Okay. And I might just take this one. 2 or 3 people have been asking more specific questions about currency conversion. One is Chris Drinnan. Thanks for your question, Chris. Yeah, there are a number of companies out there. We have one, A Place in the Sun Currency, and there's other currency brokers out there. Whoever you choose, as our panelists have already said, it's better to avoid the banks, which do tend to hit you with a fairly chunky exchange rate. So wherever you go, speak to a specialist broker, a higher level of service, generally a personal account manager, and somebody who can move your money around much quicker and more efficiently at a better rate. So that's an easy one. Gavin, the likely change to the non-habitual resident scheme after Brexit. I guess any answer to that is just conjecture.
No, it's a great question, and I can answer it positively, because Brexit will have no effect. It's the home country that sets its own tax rates. So the UK set their tax rates, Portugal sets theirs, and we have we're in the 11th year, Andy, of non-habitual residence, and this is the first year that they've altered the rules around it, and it's only just tinkering at the edges where we have this 10% tax on pensions. That's really the only change. So it's Brexit will have no effect on Portuguese taxes.
Okay. Angela, there's a few questions. Well, I was wrong on that about the conjecture, so thank you for clarifying, Gavin. I think this this is definitely conjecture. A number of people are asking, one of them is Ove Anderson, what do you think is going to be the effect on prices with the COVID-19? Somebody who was due, Ove was due to go out in April, is now coming out in October. Well, maybe the question is what he follows up with, how's the property market performing at the moment? I think the fact is there's not much of a performance.
Yeah, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I think that at the moment we are getting some sales through. People are still buying because although we've got a minimum amount of deals, because the vendors aren't tending to want to reduce the properties, they're not seeing that it's going to affect their property prices going forward. But we have got some deals on developments but they're not deals where you're getting money off. It's more deals of you're getting free rental, you're getting free management fees, things like that. You can save about 10 grand on certain ones at the moment. That's because the people are wanting some purchases now. It would be nice to get a little bit more moving. But once this has stopped and this is over, you've got to think that the demand is already there in the Algarve. There's not enough property for the people that are wanting it. That's not going to change. It could go the other way, because it could be that all the people are sat there now thinking, I should have done this. Life's short. People are realizing just how much that weeks are out of your life matter. And so why waste your time? So I think that people are going to come back from this wanting more to buy than they did before. And like I said, the demand here is already big. So I can't see the prices going down. I can only see them going up. If somebody's thinking of buying right now, and do it while you can get a bargain, while you can get one of these offers on and make some money, especially if it's a rental investment. You don't need to see it. A lot of time it's off plan anyway, so you're not going to see anything if you come over. Let us do a virtual tour, give you all the facts and the figures. You get this free rental management and condo fees and things like that, because now is when you're going to get it. It could have gone a few weeks and that will have gone. So
thank you. There's a question in from Michael Carroll, which I'll just make a comment in, is asking about searching for properties on A Place in the Sun, but also seeing property offers made on the TV show, and asking, you know, where does that price normally end up between the advertised price and the actual price? I think there's no fixed answer to that. Primarily depends on the status of the buyer. Is the buyer well prepared, a cash buyer? Do they have an agreement in principle in place with a mortgage? And also clearly the status of the vendor. How keen are they to sell? And I think, yeah, you would always expect some form of negotiation, but is it any kind of, what do you advise clients when they come out and tour with you, Angela? They see a property and they say, oh, can we make a cheeky offer, or what do you think we should offer here? I know your interests are in selling it at the price advertised by the vendor, but what do you say to potential buyers?
Usually somewhere within 5 and 10% for a first offer, and obviously it depends on the vendor, so we would help you negotiate on that. But like you say, it is down to the vendor, and the vendor will decide what situation they're in at that moment, whether they are able to take a reduction. If you look at like a development, something new, the chances are you're not going to get, unless you buy 2 or 3, you're not going to get a reduction on that. So it's all down to personal circumstances, really. Okay,
thank you. We've had a question in from Bruce McClelland, who is actually in the States. Hello, Bruce. He's asking about the purchase process, which you took us through. There's quite a lot in there, I know, Paola. It's difficult to get it all across in detail via this webinar, but he says essentially, are there any key differences between the UK process and the Portuguese process? Is there anything that stands out that's different?
Yes, especially the part of exchanging, what you call exchanging in the UK and in Portugal. In the UK, you don't have to pay the deposit. In Portugal, you pay the deposit. In the UK, last minute, people can change their mind, gazump. In Portugal, that's not possible. You will be heavily penalized. So yes, there are several differences. But once you are in the process, you can understand very well how it goes, and you can follow up. It's not difficult and not complicated. It's very clear. I'm not just saying this because this is what I do for a living, but this is the feedback from the clients. They follow up. Everything is very clear and easy to go through.
Okay. Well, Kerry Regan asks the question, if I pay that deposit and then there's a problem, can I get my deposit back? But I think the point that you made earlier is that you've done all the searches before that point.
If something goes wrong, he will be entitled not to his deposit, but to the double of what he have paid as a deposit. And I'm doing conveyancing here in the Algarve since 2002. And to be honest with you, I never had a client losing the deposit. I never had a client receiving in double, because the vendor will not accept my contract if he's not entirely certain that he can deliver the property according to the conditions that I've demanded on the contract. For the client that I'm representing. My clients or myself, I will not allow my client to go into the contract and to sign the contract and pay the deposit unless that I'm 100% sure that he can fulfill. So in Portugal, as I said, things are very black and white, and it's not easy for somebody to go into a deal and then just, oh, something went wrong and okay, I give them their deposit and that's it. No, you will be obliged to pay in double. So it's very simple. Okay,
one definitely for you, Gavin. Drawdown pensions have a 25% tax-free amount. Well, I'm not sure. This is from Kevin McLaughlin. Thank you, Kevin. I'm not sure how it quite follows on, but he then says, how would you be taxed if you moved to Portugal full time? We sort of covered that, but if you could just give a bit of a view on that.
No, it's a good question. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, the way that you would look at this is to say that you might plan to draw down the 25% before you leave the UK, and it was like something I said at the beginning about the steps and the planning. So let's say you use your 25% allowance in the UK, you move to Portugal and you start to draw down. You would then be on the non-habitual residence regime, where you would only pay 10% on everything that you drew down thereafter. There isn't a recognition in Portugal of technically it's called the pension commencement lump sum. And in the UK that is tax-free, so it's a UK concession. It's not the same in Portugal, so you wouldn't draw down the lump sum. There are cases where you can make an argument for capital and things, but you'd have to look at the detail of the pension itself. But that's something that we can help with, again, in terms of getting the timing right for that. But generally, take it before you leave the UK.
Thank you, Kevin. Do you want to try this one then, Paula? Somebody asks, typical annual ongoing costs for owning a self-contained holiday home in the Algarve. I know it's difficult to assess what's typical, but they're asking about insurance and local taxes and rates and this kind of thing. Are you able to give any insight into that?
Yes, rates normally they vary. They are properties taxable according to their rateable value, which normally is lower, much lower than what people paid for the property. I think it's like that also in the UK. And there is a very simple calculation that I always say to my clients. If you think about what you have paid for the property and times 0.3%, you will have for sure your rateable annual tax rates. In Portugal, they come 3 times a year. They come now in April to be paid in March, July to pay in August, and September, October to pay October or November. I think water, electricity and gas, they are much cheaper than in the UK. I think so, and this Angela can help me on. And basically, these are the main things to pay.
Okay. Angela, basic utilities, pretty cheap out in Portugal?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say electric's not much cheaper than the UK. Water, I find, is cheaper, quite by far, but I think it's more the everyday cost of living that you find, the lifestyle, going out, eating and drinking, being able to go to a restaurant and have a meal for €8, €9, with included wine and you can get wine and beer for like €1 a glass and stuff like that. I think that as well is, it adds to it to the lifestyle and makes your cost of living a lot less.
Yeah, okay. We've had a question in from Sonia and Colin, well, from Sonia actually, Sonia Sims. Thank you for that, Sonia. This touches on a much wider issue. I'll just read out the question. My husband and I plan to spend 3 months in Portugal before the end of this year in order to secure existing European Union rights before the end of the transition period. She then goes on to ask about possible extension, which we keep getting told is not going to happen. But this question, Gavin, of maybe moving now, trying to get residency, acquiring existing rights versus buying a property next year after we are planning to have left the European Union. What sort of impact do you think the Brexit situation is potentially going to have?
Well, it's that question that you asked earlier, Andy, where you're saying, well, you know, what other effects are there from Brexit, and is there uncertainty? The one thing that we've got at the moment is certainty. So for Sonia saying yes, she's going to come now, she would know that by drawing that line in the sand, she has a residencia here, and she's not going to face any problems next year once the UK has completely exited from the European Union. However, the Prime Minister Costa has been consistently putting out in the Portuguese press how they want to welcome the British with open arms, that we've got the oldest alliance in history, and that they'll continue to provide a way. It may be a more bureaucratic process in terms of applying for the right to live in the future. But there's certainly, if those are the plans and the way that Sonia's thinking, then again, she might just take advice either from her financial advisor or from a Portuguese accountant to say, what will the tax consequences be of making my move on this particular date? And remember that the dates don't tie in. The UK has a tax year that runs April to April, whereas in Portugal, it's January till December. And then there are other issues around the idea of leaving the UK leaving the EU with Brexit. And while they're not Portuguese specific, as I said earlier, the Portuguese rules will stay the same. The UK not being part of the EU will take away the free movement of goods, capital, people and services, the pillars of the European Union. The UK won't have to comply to that. And how that will affect people will be in whether they can move their pensions out of the UK in the future, lump sum, into qualifying overseas pensions. They may not be able to do that once the UK is out. They may face an overseas transfer charge on their pensions of 25%. So again, there's planning that needs to be done now to say, can you take advantage of that? Can you act today with certainty and not have to worry about, well, what will things look like post-Brexit?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good answer. I think it's also important to say, because we have had in our offices lots of calls and emails in about Brexit, and people concerned about even will they still be able to buy property after we leave the European Union. And of course we will. There are legions of Americans, Chinese, Australians who own property all over Europe. So the idea, of course, we'll still be able to own property. It might be more complicated. There might be fewer tax benefits in what you've just outlined, Gavin. But yeah, clearly we'll be able to own and visit a property that we bought somewhere in the European Union. Some quick fire questions. We were due to finish at 2:45, but we have lots of questions. I can't imagine anybody's got anything better to do right now or anywhere else to go. So if it's all right with you, we'll kick on until 3 o'clock. Some quick fire questions. Maybe one for you here, Angela. Milan Milanovic asks, again, it's one of those questions, what's the best part? I'm not sure there is a right or wrong, but in your opinion, the Algarve, is it an all year round place to live or retire? And where would I avoid that's seasonal? And can you tell me where there are some good international schools?
Yes, okay. We've got quite a few good international schools. I think there's about 4 big ones along the Algarve, and I know there's a lot of small ones turning up as well now. We're getting a lot of new schools spring up. I would say to live here, I mean, I live in inland. I live in inland about 25 minutes drive from the coast. I find that it doesn't change from season to season. It's the same all year round. It doesn't get busier, and in the winter it doesn't get quieter. All my restaurants stay open. So I do live with the locals, so I don't live where the tourist people go. So it depends on what you want. Some people might want it where it's a little bit more lively through the summer. But I would say that I don't speak Portuguese. I've lived in the countryside for 14 years. I get on with my neighbours and we do charades.
Angela, that's terrible.
I know. I've tried. I can't speak English.
You speak Yorkshire, I know.
Yeah. So yeah. So but for me, it is nice. Just even if it's just 10 minutes inland. It's a different feel to what it is down at the coast, like you say, when you get the tourist people there. But it is all year round in some areas, for even in the tourist areas. So it depends on what you want. I always say that if you can't walk to the beach, you've got to drive. You don't mind if it's 5 minutes or 20 minutes. You've still got to make a journey. So if you're going to get a little bit more for your money going inland, you're going to get a different kind of lifestyle. Your restaurants are going to be, you'll get more money. Food for your money and stuff like that, then why not do that? So
okay, thank you. Again, there's lots of questions about where's a good place to buy, where's a cheap place to buy. I would say to those people, aplaceinthesun.com, you can search for a whole host of properties in Portugal. You'll get a sense of the locations and the pricing and how far your money goes in different areas. And indeed, as Angela has just explained, clearly inland, away from the popular tourist areas, is substantially cheaper. We also have a resources area, an advice tab on the website. Under there, you can download our buying guide to Portugal. We also have a list of professional services with lawyers' services. I think Paola's name might be up there somewhere. And coming to you, Paola, I do love a detailed question. And I don't think I've ever thrown a question at you that you failed to answer, but you're not going to be able to answer this one, I'm sure. There's a wider issue here from Jonathan Menis, from Fiona Larby, who is asking about relocating to the Algarve with pets. Now,
you're most welcome.
You thought this was going to be easy. It's a cat and a dog question. Maybe we should cover cat and dogs because it will cover more people. They want to relocate with an African grey parrot.
Mm-hmm.
Are you stumped? You're stumped.
Yes, I am. No, what I think is I have a vet just beside my office. Monday, we will be going back to work. I will pop in, find out exactly what the requirements are, and they can send me the question directly to my email address. And be aware that I don't charge for information, so everyone please feel free to contact us, and then I will know exactly the answer, because I have more clients with parrots that they are already bought the plots, they are building, and soon they will want to bring. So that one is interesting also for me to know to answer.
Thank you for the question, Fiona. So yeah, what a fantastic medium this is. You're going to get a direct answer. We will pass your question on to Paola, and you'll be hearing back from her next week. Gavin,
one in football.
It's actually on the golden visa.
Okay.
Am I right in thinking there's a €500,000? Is that the amount that you need to have at your disposal?
Yes, that's right. So you buying property at €500,000 qualifies for the golden visa. Right.
That's the basic answer. And so under that, you just don't qualify for the scheme. Is that right?
Sorry, I missed the question.
If you're under that amount, it just does not qualify for the scheme. Again, this is Fiona Larby. Thanks again, Fiona. She's found a property at 400,000. Would that just mean that she's ineligible for the scheme?
No, Angela tells me that 400,000 works in the Algarve. Thank you, Angela.
Is that right, Angela?
Reduced. Yeah, it's just been reduced because it's low density area, and so for now it's 400,000, and it's 280,000 if it's a renovation project. So it did used to be 500,000, and so, but obviously, if you live in the UK, you don't need it. It's for foreign residents. to get the golden visa.
Yeah, okay. So a question, I know, maybe putting aside for a moment, Angela, I know you have a mortgage brokerage there within your business, but somebody from the UK looking to buy in Portugal and needing a mortgage, what are their options of a UK-based mortgage or a Portuguese-based mortgage? What do you recommend, or what are their options? And then a follow-up question, what sort of loan to value would they be able to get typically on a Portuguese mortgage?
It would have to be a Portuguese mortgage. You can't get a UK mortgage on a Portuguese property. You can raise money out of your property and bring it over, obviously, it's from the UK, but you would have to get your mortgage here. You can get up to 80% mortgages. I think there's one bank, we deal with most banks in Portugal, and I think one of the banks does it up to 80%. We do over a 40-year period up to the age of 75 or 80, again depending on the bank, and the mortgage rates around 1 to 1.5%. So, and it's quite simple. It's a simple process. It's the same as the UK, like where you need. It's basically what you earn, what you pay out, and a third of what's left, and you just need the paperwork for the last 3 months from your earnings and your bank statements and things like that. But the mortgage consultant gives a pack of everything that's needed, and she can do that. She can pre-approve you without you even finding a property. She can look into it and make sure that you know before you look for the property what you're going to spend, because otherwise you might find a property and then you actually can't afford it. So it's best to do it first.
Okay, thank you. Simon Edwards has sent in a couple of questions. He's interested in buying in Madeira. More or less, is it the same jurisdiction, same fiscal status between the two territories, Paula?
Yes, it is, and we do represent clients buying on Madeira. I have a few deals going in Madeira, so yes, the process is very similar.
Okay, and sticking with you, Paula, we haven't touched on death yet. Let's finish off with death. Can a Portuguese property be passed on via a will? This question has come up a lot in the other sessions, and I'm actually surprised we haven't got onto it yet. But what do you recommend when it comes to somebody buying say a holiday home in Portugal, a British buyer? Do you recommend they make a Portuguese will as well?
I live on services, and of course I would recommend, but to start with, I would say that it's not mandatory to have a will in Portugal for the Portuguese property. Most of the lawyers in the UK, I have noticed that they have recommended my clients to make a will in Portugal, but it's not mandatory. Don't be afraid if you don't have a will in Portugal covering your property, destination of your property post-mortem. If you have a will in the UK with those instructions, we can fulfill. The only difference, or the main difference, the biggest difference that I have found among my clients that no longer with us, and the ones that had wills and the ones that didn't have wills, the big difference was in the time, the length of time that goes from when probate starts and when finishes. And I have found out that those that don't have a will can take me longer, much longer. I'm remembering one case in particular that took me 3 years. I felt very embarrassed to charge any fees to my clients, but they paid me. They were very, very, very kind, but really I felt embarrassed because the process became very complex. Those that have a will in Portugal, normally probate takes around 3 months.
Okay, thank you. We're due to finish up in a minute or so, and this is quite a big area, but quite a few questions coming in about healthcare. And say the worst is to happen and we don't get to some sort of reciprocal agreement post-Brexit. Gavin, what would somebody be looking at for potentially private cover, or how would you suggest they go about exploring those options?
I'd start by saying that the healthcare in Portugal over the time that I've been here, the quality of healthcare has increased immeasurably, and so the public health care system is actually very, very good. In terms of taking out personal and private healthcare, the cost of that ranges significantly, and it will depending on the benefits that you're looking for from it. But there are some very, very good local schemes. The Association of Foreign Property Owners in Portugal, AFPOP, have an arrangement with a local company, and they produce a very good group scheme that's worth looking at. I'd recommend people look up AFPOP and consider, if they're looking at Portugal, getting some information from there. It's an excellent source of information. And in terms of the healthcare side of things, you can be paying anything from €1,000 a year for a local contract to 10 to 20,000 a year for an international contract from some of the big players like Bupa and so on. They're very age related, so you really do have to spend some time sifting through individually.
Right, thank you. We still have some questions here, but I think our hour is up. So a lot of people asking for your contact details, so we will help them out with that rather than just give them out publicly here. So you might well have some follow up. You need to go off and check about parrots, Paula, for Monday. So we'll deal with that. I'm not going to ask whether it's bilingual. We will maybe find that out next week. But thank you, everybody. We've had over 270 people throughout. It's been really pleasurable to have you along. Thank you for all your interaction and questions. There's been such a lot. I am sorry if we haven't got round to answering them all. We will be doing more events like this. We will probably be doing them more specific, so we can drill down into some of the details about the conveyancing contract, or more information about retiring to Portugal and wealth management and these issues. So keep an eye on our website, aplaceinthesun.com/webinars. The only thing to do now, apart from to wish you all a good weekend, I know none of us have got anything too exciting planned, but hey, it's the weekend, is to give my thanks to my well-informed and cheery panelists. So thank you, Angela, thank you, Paula, and thank you, Gavin.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to everybody, and goodbye.
Good afternoon. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.